Okay, we have no local board input, so our first item up on the agenda is the AT Q4 performance report. So Rebecca, coming from the rear, going to be heading this up. And joined by Stacey and Richard. So welcome, Richard. And welcome, Stacey.
Kia ora koutou. Today we are presenting to you the Q4 performance report for Auckland Transport, and additionally a deep dive report into public transport patronage, which was requested by this committee in March this year. That request came in response to an observed plateauing of patronage figures at that time, and Richard will talk you through that presentation shortly. So I'm joined by Stacey Vanderputten and Richard Harrison, who is currently Director of Active Modes at AT, and will be presenting those slides to you shortly. With respect to the performance report, Auckland Transport's performance has improved in Q4, with Auckland Transport meeting 20 out of 24 SOI measures. 14 of those measures were exceeding the SOI target. 4 of their performance measures did not meet target, and those include formal complaints, public transport utilisation, death and serious injuries, and Māori procurement. Capital expenditure made a significant improvement, with AT finishing the financial year delivering its largest capital program to date. CapEx ended at $1.373 billion for the financial year, being 93% of budget against a target of 90%. Progress against SOI deliverables was strong, with 40 of 42 deliverables reported as on track or completed. Carrying over from Q3, deliverables not completed and off track continue to relate to worksite signage requirements and the low emissions ferry program. I know that you have a separate report on this agenda, which will go into further detail on the ferry fleet and services procurement. There are some key highlights in the report, including practical completion of the CRL on 30 June, significant improvements in capital program delivery and road maintenance, and an additional 69 new zero-emission buses that entered service. Before I hand over to Richard, I'll just note that this is not the last AT current form performance report that will be received by this committee. Q1 of this financial year will be reported to this committee in December, and that will reflect AT's performance for the final 3 months of current state. It will then transition into PTCCO reporting post-transition, and that will be starting to be received by this committee in February next year. I'll now hand to Richard to talk through PT Deep Dive before we get into questions on either the performance report or the patronage presentation.
Good morning. There's a lot of detail in the slides, so I appreciate that. I'm just going to talk you through the patronage outcomes from last year, some of the drivers we've seen, the actions we took, and crucially the actions we're going to take in the coming year. So in last year we landed at 92 million boardings, which was a 3.1 million boarding uplift from the previous financial year, which is about 3.5%. That's not as high as we wanted it to be, not as high as we expected. The first half of the financial year, patronage was very flat, and NZTA have done some analysis across New Zealand and report that this is the same in every jurisdiction. So work from home being prevalent and economic factors were major impacts on all PTAs. Second half of the year, though, we did increase significantly and came in above our second half target. Main impacts there were the changes we made to the tertiary concession. We got a big uplift from that. Service improvements that we made across the network that went live in the first half of this year. And of course, we got a little bit of a boost from the fuel crisis. We saw some new riders coming onto the network, and I'm happy to say they seem to have continued using public transport, so that's great. They're building new habits. In terms of particular growth within our patronage types, tertiary, as I said, was the big success. We doubled the tertiary concession from 20% to 40%. That attracted about 20,000 more concession holders, and the usage of all tertiary concession holders went up as well. So in here we're showing 21.8% year to date, which includes tertiary holiday periods. If you compare this July just gone with the previous July, tertiary ridership is up by 61% year on year. So we went into changing the concession assuming that we would be able to break even on the increased funding by attracting new riders. We're actually gaining more revenue now from tertiary holders. So students are saving money individually, but because we've got so many more people using that concession, we're actually managed to increase our revenue. Fair Share was also a big success in the year. In the last year, we introduced a 100% subsidy, so we've now got 13 organisations who fully fund their employees' public transport travel, and we've proven that when somebody joins the Fair Share concession, PT usage increases by at least 30%. We're just waiting to get some numbers on those 100% subsidy companies, because I expect that will be even higher. And we partnered with Tartak in the last year to do more to target visitors to Auckland and conference attendees in particular. So we launched the Hui Pass for conference attendees, and we've seen a 50% increase in international credit cards being used on the network. So we're definitely attracting more visitors. And the fuel crisis, it's a little hard to untangle the fuel crisis impact from all the other changes, but we think there's something like an 8% increase from the fuel crisis, and those riders appear to be staying on the network. So they are, once they've tried PT, they seem to quite like it and continue using it. We did face some challenges in the last financial year. Obviously, our job is to overcome those challenges and to find a way around it. But plateau patronage I've talked about, that just seems to be a factor in New Zealand at the moment. And of course, the ongoing disruption to rail services has suppressed demand for rail. CRL and the end of Kiwi Rail's rail recovery rail network rebuild program is going to bring back more reliable services, and we expect that we will get a recovery of people being won back to using rail as they start to see it's more reliable. We saw on Route 70, bus Route 70 dropped by 10% when the Southern Line got more reliable last year. So we were able to map those hot cards of people going back to using train again, so we expect to see the same across the network. Utilisation has been a concern in South Auckland. It seems that we're not meeting the needs of our customers in South Auckland, so we've just completed a review of the Auckland network and what our customer expectations are. So in the coming financial year, we expect to make some changes to the South Auckland network to better meet customer demand. And child patronage, for the first half of the year, we were still comparing to a period in the previous year where we still had a boost in child patronage from the centrally government-funded discounts. That came off in the middle of the year, but it was at the start of the following term that we saw behaviour change. So we were comparing to a high of child patronage. So, of course, the big opportunity in the coming year is going to be opening CRL, which we'll be talking about in more detail later. We'll be leveraging the new rail network to attract people back to train and also to show Aucklanders what opportunities they got with new journeys. We're also keen to take our learnings from the tertiary concession change and look at how we might expand using concessions to gain patronage. We're going to focus on simplification, so tertiary eligibility. Rules are a little complex and don't cover every student in Auckland, so there's an opportunity there. And we want to look at where there's a low uptake of concessions and a big opportunity. Also looking at simplifying the tertiary application process to put more automation in, because we think that's a barrier to people taking up the concession, and want to look at how we support our 16 to 18-year-olds. Again, there's a more difficult process for 16-year-olds to gain a concession than there is for children 5 to 15, so we'll look at simplifying that. And then, of course, there's always a continuing range of other initiatives that we're running. Just want to share a reminder of the service enhancements that are planned for FY27. We saw the highest growth of all route types on the FTN network, so about 6% increase in those frequent transit networks, so we're focused on improvements in those areas. And Drury and Pirata, which went live recently, are already on track for adding about 100,000 boardings to our patronage numbers, without a drop in Papakura and Pukekohe, it's the same. So all of that leads us to our target for the coming year. You'll know the target is 103.8 million boardings, up from the 92 million we achieved last financial year. It is a big target, but based on the performance we've seen so far in this year, quietly confident. We've had a very strong start and we still have CRL and other improvements to come. That's my very quick overview. Over to questions.
Brilliant. Thanks, Richard. So just concentrating on the report. Questions? Oh, Desley.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I haven't got my thing electronically. Look, there's some good stuff in here. Well done. I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions if I can, please. What's, in the complaints, what are there any themes in the complaints? Are there anything that is coming through regularly, or are they all random? I noticed that the target wasn't met in that area. I'm just wondering if there's anything recurring. I don't know what the theme is. What are people saying? What are they complaining about? Is there any specific things that we should look at, or you should look at?
Nothing really in particular. It actually has a lot to do with how that outcome has a lot to do with how they're actually input in terms of that. So they've improved the sort of customer turnaround aspect, but it's actually to do with the change of categorisation. Yeah, so they worked really hard, as you can see, to bring it down in the last quarter, but there is some residual closeout. So a constant work in process in terms of improving, but it's been about improving the turnaround with categorisation, which has resulted in an uplift of how many go into that category to get more focus and oversight. But of course, it does impact how your result comes through.
Okay, so there's nothing you think you need to focus on more to actually fix that. It's just more of a process issue, is what you're saying, right? Okay, my second question is, I'm very interested in the hui card, because I think, you know, we are now placed for, with the CRL opening, you've got a 50% increase in international credit cards using that. Have you got any data up? How long have you been looking at that data? Is it been going for some time, or is this kind of just, we've just brought the hui card in? Is this year one, and then we'll go, it's 50% up of anything in the past, and then you're going to measure it ongoing from now on? Is that what you're saying?
There's two things there. So the 50% increase is on credit cards used through the contactless payments. We've been tracking that ever since contactless payments started, which I think is 2-3 years ago, off the top of my head. And we've seen a major increase since we've been working with Tautaki on promoting the network to visitors. The hui card is a conference pass that conference organisers can buy and give out to their attendees. We've just launched that middle of this year. There's a gaming conference coming up. They'll be the first user of it, so we'll get some results from that.
I think that's a really good thing. I'm really keen to promote that at all conferences. So, yeah, well done on that. And look, just for a question for clarification, because it does sound a bit of an oxymoron, but can you explain how you reduce fares for tertiary and actually end up by getting more income in? It's a very interesting concept I'm interested in, and I think you've done really well here, but for a question for clarification, because it sounds a bit, I was going to say Irish. It
does sound a bit wrong, yes, I get that. And yeah, I said our aim was to break even on it. It was the increase in users, so 20,000 more concession holders, and then an increase in the frequency of travel. So as you saw, tertiary students travelling more. I don't have the number of the average trips with me, but more people and more trips from those people. But for the student themselves, they're still saving money on what they were paying before. We just got more of them.
Am I correct? Because it's cheaper to travel, they travel more. And because they travel more and more often, we get more revenue.
That's it, yeah. And one of the rationale for doing it was that we knew students are more price sensitive. So it'll be more price elastic. If we change the price, they will travel more.
Thank you. I think that's a good point to make. Yeah.
Thank you. Lottie.
Kia ora, thank you. And just on the back of the comments from the Deputy Mayor, I commend you as well. There's some really, really good results there. Probably the real negative thing in there, of course, is the South Auckland patronage, and that has been an issue for a long time, though. I remember when I was chair of the local board in Otara Papatoe, it was an issue then, and we worked with Auckland Transport to try to do some initiatives like hop cards, offering hop cards into the community. But I've recently heard, for example, at the Otara Town Centre, the one shop there that did sell was where you could top the hop cards up, I think has closed or something. So those sorts of issues contribute to, the problems in South Auckland, and I don't know what we can do in terms of retailers and increasing the ability for people to access, but that's one of the factors is access. Even if you've got a hop card, you can't top it up. There's nowhere to top it up, and our community has the lowest uptake of internet, so they're not likely to top up using the online process. But I wanted to also encourage you, I know that you're looking at that and you're trying to target that more, encourage you to use some of the initiatives that are working with our local boards in South Auckland. For example, the My Street Neighbours program in South Auckland, that's been really successful in helping young people to use cycling. Mr. T in Mangere as well, using cycling. So there's some real influences out there that can really help to get the message across. And I have seen some of your short videos that are out and about that are really good as well. And I saw some of the new ambassadors and Armour Guard, I think they're from, and that was really, really cool as well. So things like that are really useful, and certainly use our local boards and the contacts that they've got in that space, and Alf and I can help you connect to them as well. Kia ora. I don't know if that's a question.
Me neither. Beaming in online, Sarah, who thanks for being here, feeling very unwell, but thank you for being here. Your turn.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully my beaming is audible. I had a couple of questions. One was in the deep dive on slide 10, the one that says location of most underperforming bus routes. That one, one of the routes identified as I was about to call it the 67A because that's what my kids call it, the 67A. I'm aware that there's been some ongoing issues, and I've raised this with the team about non-full buses driving past people hailing on bus stops, and that's really affected the patronage because that bus is only every half an hour. So the two questions from that, one is, are we, putting the heat on the operator about this and why they're driving past people trying to get on that bus? And the second question on that is, so conversely, would part of the solution possibly be looking at increasing the frequency of those services? Because if you miss one, then having to wait 45 minutes in the dark is quite different from then having to wait 10 minutes. That's my first of a couple of questions.
Thank you. On buses driving past people, yes, absolutely. If we hear of these, then we raise it with the operator and ask them to tell us how they're going to resolve it. So I will take that one away, specifically on the 67A. On the frequency, absolutely, if it is appropriate and if that's what the community need, if that supports them in the journeys they want to take, we know that increasing the frequency of a route definitely increases patronage, because people stop thinking about it as something they've got to plan to go and catch and start just going to the bus stop and waiting and being confident that there will be a bus there within reasonable time. We know it's a big concern for people to have to wait a long time in the dark, feeling uncertain about how safe they're going to be. So yeah, if it's appropriate as part of the review, then yes, we might look at increasing frequency on some routes.
Thank you. I think, yeah, for the 67A, it's probably worth looking into, and I'll forward some of the correspondence about that. My second question was the lower than expected, well, the kind of plateauing, I guess, of the PT patronage. Is it possible, have we been mapping the cycling numbers onto this? Because it's been a really good winter, and I'm just wondering if part of this story is actually a good news thing and that there's been more opportunities for active transport because there's been fewer rainy days.
Yes, it has. We do know that mode shift between public transport and cycling is more likely than mode shift between private vehicle and cycling. So we might be seeing the same people choosing to take advantage of the good weather. We also see cycling as a key part of first leg and last leg public transport. So not necessarily a competitor for PT, but how do we enable people to cycle to a busway interchange and then start using the bus?
Thank you so much. And just my final question was just on the DSI's targets. So in general, like, this is amazing quarterly report. I should preface it by saying that so many of those targets are being smashed, and that's awesome. But I guess one of the ones that stuck out is that DSI's one. So what are we looking into doing about that?
Thanks for your question. Yes, it's a constant area that we have to continually improve on, and it's not one thing. And I think we had Teresa here last month in terms of talking about safe speeds and the work that's happening in that area. When you sort of look overall in terms of that, deaths were down, serious injuries were up. We need to continually focus in terms of those people outside of the vehicle because they are disproportionately affected in terms of that. So that sort of comes down to, I guess, what the LTP planning looks like in the next duration too, in terms of what the focus areas the committee wants on.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah. Julie.
Kia ora, thank you. I had a question around the 67A as well. And unlike Sarah's children, we're not allowed to say it in my house. We have to refer to it as my youngest son's least favourite bus route because he doesn't like the whole 6-7 thing. The low patronage, I wondered if the 67B is holding up, because it may be that people are choosing to take the B rather than the A. There is a slight difference in the routes. If we could understand that a little bit better, because it does stand out as the only one on the isthmus. The rest are obviously part of the broader issue we have in the south.
Thank you. I'll look into that. Didn't come prepared for a deep dive into the 67s.
Sorry.
But it'll be top of our list when I get back to the office.
All good. And I mean, to that point though, that Councillor Foley's made around the issues with the south and access to top up and stuff, are we seeing? I think there's a safety, at least perception, in that part of the city as well. That is probably a factor. So any comment that you had on that, but also a lot of the train stations, if not all of them, certainly the Manukau bus station, they have machines for top-ups. Are we finding that people don't use the machines so much for top-up? Is that an issue? Because I would have thought that would have helped with access. Because there are generally machines.
I think that the better the access we can provide, the more likely people are going to use it. It might be that people don't want to travel a little bit further to get to the machine. I don't have any stats on use of machines versus the retail network. I think it's just about having convenience. It's easy to top up. You don't have to think about it.
I think that
No
might be
machine
worth...
in the Otara Town Centre, there's no machines.
So I think it might be worth some more exploration anyway. Then the final question was around tertiary users, the increase there. So if I recall correctly, before you brought the discount in, you had some modelling that suggested that it would pay for itself. And that has now proven correct, yay. Can we apply that modelling to some other community groups? I'm thinking particularly around Community Connect and children. You know, you've called out there that we've had a big fall in child patronage because of losing discounts that were central government funded. But it would be worth us, I think, exploring. We've got some robust modelling now that's worked. Is it worth us looking at our own, re-establishing our own child discount that could in turn potentially pay for itself, especially if we add in the congestion impact around school drop-offs and pick-ups as well as a factor?
I've used that modelling to look at where the next opportunity might be, where we're underserving a customer segment, and that's why we're focusing on Community Connect in the coming year. We see a big opportunity there. Child is a little harder because we're not selling directly to the end user. We've got to find a way to talk to the parents who are paying the bill and encouraging their children to use a hot card. But yes, it's on our list of things to figure out how we tackle it. So yes, there's a big opportunity. It's just the way we do it.
Yeah, and I would say too that a lot of primary schools are not necessarily well served by dedicated school buses, okay, that they're largely attributed to secondary school. And so because of that, parents don't feel, confident in terms of putting their smaller children in terms of the public services available. So that's one thing that we do have to overcome and see what we can do differently.
I think it would be useful, you said, Richard, that you're looking at it. So what would be a time frame on when we might hear more about that?
I've got the team focused on some other initiatives at the moment, so it's going to be later in the year once they've got those things moving. I think what we learned last year was the first half of the year was establishing a lot of these initiatives to come into effect when we start talking about fare reviews in February, so it'll be after that.
Okay, great. Acknowledging you're in transition too, so I wasn't expecting it tomorrow. Great. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Richard.
Kia ora, thank you, and congratulations. There's lots of good news in here. On the patronage, once again, it's kind of, I was talking about this at the City Centre Advisory Panel yesterday, the numbers of people and sometimes the days are well ahead of COVID, but it's still the number of days people are using it that kind of break us down. Have we thought of doing anything like half price Fridays or something like that to try and trigger a little bit of what the tertiary is doing? Because it seems like the issue, and we can't force people to not work at home or anything like that. Like, I'm not saying people need to always come into the city, but it does feel like people have got into this pattern where, I can stay home Monday, Friday, but what if we made it more attractive especially with the city rail link and everything, that actually people could come in a bit more often, because it's clearly the number of days, not the number of people who are using the public transport.
You're correct. I mean, look, we're really limited about what we can do with our ticketing system in terms of particular days of the week. I think that's the challenge. As Richard said about fair share, where we've got businesses investing in their people's public transport use, we've shown good results, and therefore I'd expect that they'll be travelling more on all days of the week in terms of that, which is what the evidence says. We've had our TravelWise team out in the city working with businesses in terms of establishing travel plans, obviously bringing the city rail link into the equation and conversation as a lever to do so in terms of that, to building it up. But we are seeing really good sustained use over the last 6 months, and I think that gives heart to what's ahead as we further expand with the city rail link. Yeah.
If I could just add to that one, a couple of interesting things we saw from fair share and from the changes after the fuel crisis started was the increase in weekend trips. So we got a significant step up, particularly after the fuel crisis and the weekend. So the hypothesis is that people who see PT as a way to commute started seeing it as something they could use at the weekends as well, and that might be our opportunity, rather than asking people to commute more, as you say.
Thank you. Are we doing some other light touch things that might make a big difference, like the fare crossover zones, like with the CRL? Like Newmarket is not included in the two crossover fare zones where it maybe should be. You know how you can tap in, like I think might have been the museums out, but something else is in. I'm just wondering, I don't think those have been looked at since 2018, and it might just be time to go, doesn't make sense, that person's probably going to drive here because actually it's costing them twice as much. But if it was just a slightly broader zone, then they would be charged once.
Yeah, agreed. And we need to balance that against the yield as well, and what we anticipate that may mean in terms of if you do change the boundaries, then you need an overall incremental cost up for that to balance that out. So that is something that the team do look at in terms of with the fair annual reviews. Yeah.
And I know you did some really good modelling earlier in the year for me on specific routes around capacity. Are we seeing the issue of the non-tapping on, I guess, creeping back in? I've seen a bit more of it lately. It kind of did subside. Yeah, and how are we tackling it? Because I have seen more officers on the bus and checking my own hop card and things like that, which is great. But is there anything more we can do?
Yeah, it's an ongoing problem. We are getting a bit more targeted now in how we're deploying the transport officers because we're getting better data through. A lot of our bus drivers now log when they have people not paying. That lets us see the patterns and the trends. This year we're doing some trials of automated bus door counters. Like we already have door counters on the trains. We want to get them onto the buses as well. That will give us even better data so we can target it.
And last question, Chair. The people getting hit outside a vehicle, I mean pedestrians and people riding bikes, does that trigger, and I'm thinking about what's next when it comes to the council, does that trigger an assessment of things we need to do, or is it the other way? You guys assess different areas and then look up the crash data, or if you're seeing something pop up where a lot more people are getting hit or hurt or unfortunately killed, are you looking at safety improvements that need to be done?
Yeah, absolutely. So every incident where there is a death or serious injury, there is a review taken in terms of what mitigations need to be put in place or what aspects of the road layout, etc., were attributable to what happened there. So that's constant. There's always follow-up actions with that too to make sure in terms of what comes next. But, what I will say is just remember we did those local board plans and everybody has access to them, and it provides you with a really good level of information to understand what's happening in the local board areas in terms of how incidents are happening, how they're attributed, and needless to say, where you've got a higher population in terms of density and more moving things, then those results, particularly for people outside the vehicle, are a lot higher. Yeah.
Thank you. Daniel?
Good morning. I want to reflect on the progress that's been made with respect to the renewals in the Q4. That's in the briefing. That's a really good number to get above 7%, because I have seen over many years Auckland Transport falling below or well below that number. So what's your ability to try and sustain it at or above that number? Because if you start to accrue results quarter by quarter above the 7% target, the region's going to be in a much better state. I would like you to do that. I would prefer that you don't bank that we're over this quarter and therefore we're going to ease back in the next quarter. I want you to try and meet or exceed that constantly so we can talk about whether we need to move that up to a new stretch target. Can you comment?
Well, the delivering machine is there and able. It's really got to do with the funding provision attributed to it. So yes, they can. Yeah.
So is that a conversation that you are having with NZTA? Are they looking at that and saying, oh, well, look, I mean, maybe they need to dial back? I mean, what I want is I want you to have the capacity and I want the business case for the funding pathway to try and push beyond what we're achieving. Because 7.3, 7.4, and 7%, I mean, it might not sound much, but I've seen quarters where I think you've been struggling to get to 5%, and that's quite significant. So how's that conversation with NZTA?
I think it's a joint conversation because obviously we have to have it with yourselves too in terms of how that SOI is set and what's being asked for. It is in terms of, I know we've had lots of conversations here about chip seal versus, bitumen and the likes as well, and how that sort of enables the work to be done with the funding provision available. So it is what it is. I guess what I say, if you want to target that, then that's what we need to forward plan in terms of the SOI and make sure NZTA can meet it too.
Okay, can I ask you about the overbridges? Do you mind taking a question on that? The Takanini and the Timahia rail overbridges that you've highlighted, just a fantastic achievement delivering. I mean, I feel like they're international border crossings, to be honest, rather than overpasses, because they are just so big and very engineered. It is absolutely the case that the throw screens and the canopies need to be installed. What do you think about that? Chair, can you take another question or two and I'll come back to it? Can I just revert?
Yep, Maggie.
Kia ora. Needless to say, it's disappointing to see that 3% Māori procurement target was not met for the financial year. Reading the report, it appears to attribute this to the impact of a single contract, however, missing the target by around a third. So it does raise a broader question around whether there is enough resilience in the pipeline to deliver results. My question really is what is being done to ensure better results moving forward?
Yeah, look, the team do sort of prioritise how they approach that from a procurement perspective in terms of that, so it does need to be a focus area. Particularly on that capital side, of course, we've got some challenges on the public transport side, which I know we will talk about when we talk about the forward SOI. But it is in terms of them helping that market grow and shape, and then, of course, looking at that objectively in terms of how they procure. So there is a focus on that sustainable procurement element within our strategy.
Thank you. Mike.
Thank you. Now, thank you for the report. It's very helpful. What is clear, and I think the questions around the table from colleagues touches on this consistently, is the importance of the cost of fares for PT, commuting, the commuting market, if I could call it that, working people, working commuters. That market is highly price sensitive. I've noticed that we're always willing to note, to appreciate when fuel goes up, there is almost an immediate response with uplift towards PT. But when we bump up the PT fares, we think, well, that won't have any effect. We're flatlining. we're still 10 million passenger trips per year below what we had in early 2020 before the pandemic, and we haven't recovered yet. And yet in Australia, in Sydney, strong growth, Brisbane, strong growth driven by strong growth driven by, they say, a 50-cent fare. And then Perth set new records, cheaper fares. So there is the fare component, apart from other stuff, reliability and all the rest of it, is a major in public transport. So my question is, given we are flatlining, and there may be a tweak due to what's happening in the Straits of Hormuz, and there seems to be a belated one actually, but anyway, has the new AT considered, given its focus now on public transport, having a good look at Sydney, Brisbane and Perth and see what the secret of their success is? Because in every other sense, we're part of the same global economy, very similar culture. I think it would be helpful. So that's my question.
Thank you, Councillor. We're actually looking at very good growth right now. So as Richard reported in terms of the second half of the financial year, and that has continued in terms of that. I think we're roughly 8 to 9% same time last year up for the start of this financial year, which is a really good sign in terms of that. I have regular conversations with my Australasian colleagues, particularly Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane. I sit on the PTAN's board, so we do exchange information. Of course, Brisbane did experience a big uplift with their 50-cent fares. That has reasonably plateaued now in terms of that. It hasn't sort of continued to escalate thereafter. In Sydney and Melbourne are actually still below their pre-COVID levels from memory.
Sydney is not.
Well,
Sydney has gone past it.
We don't need to argue. We'll just let her answer the
I will
question.
check out. I think, and Richard will probably want to elbow me for saying this, but if we were continued at the trajectory we were at today, we will be at 100 million based on today's numbers, for this financial year, and that is without City Rail Link, so I think it's going pretty well in terms of that. I think the continued investment as outlined in terms of the frequent corridors is really working well for the city, and you can see that in the data that is demonstrating. It is a constant what can we do better and what do we want to invest in. There's also the equation of what you expect for fare box recovery and the private revenue ratio, and that's really important because if I look at our fare box recovery compared to our Australasian peers, we are much higher, so their contribution, public contribution is a lot higher than what it is here. So it's all under 20% there.
Yeah, look, all I was asking was a very simple question. Have you considered going over there? Because I think it would be helpful. I'm trying to be supportive. The next question is a lot more modest, really, than suggesting or asking whether you'd go to Sydney or not. And that is, could the piano at Britomart, Waitemata Station, former CPO building, some of the keys are not working. Could someone have a look at that? Because it's very popular. Thank you very much.
Thank you. John?
Just reading through your presentation as it goes to the key challenges and particularly the lack of confidence in the train performance that's identified there. I think obviously that's going to be aided quite significantly by all the publicity with CRL and that, the network's been transformed, and you would hope that will get out to a lot of people. My question, however, is just a general one. We all know that if there's bad disruption to public transport service, that there are consequences, for the public uptake, and then the recovery trajectory, which, in my experience, can take quite some time. So, do we have a general approach to services that have been affected like that in terms of trying to win those people back? And the reason I say that, because I know, a number of years ago, AT had a very successful program where they were focused in on one particular bus route up in Millwater, and the patronage went up quite spectacularly. So, number one, do we have a kind of modus operandi we employ there, and B, is that constrained in any way at the moment by the usual kind of concerns with budgets and whatnot, and able to enact that recovery and to win essentially people back?
We've got good lessons learned from the bus driver shortage that we had a few years ago, and how we managed to get recovery from that. Within 6 to 12 months, we saw all bus routes of getting back to the right number of drivers, so all bus routes come back to the previous levels. We applied that thinking to rail recovery as well. Obviously, we're doing a lot more with rail recovery because it's tied into the opening of CRL, which is something we need to tell Aucklanders about. So yes, absolutely, we've learned from the past.
So if a resource is employed, you can get a relatively quick response then. So people are willing to come back to what they were before, if that message has got through to them.
That's right. It's really important we get out and tell people your service is now reliable, and we can show them some proof of that. It's something we invest in.
Okay, thank you, John. Joe.
Oh, thank you. Congratulations on the achievements in your report. My questions are around safety on the bus and the train. I suppose it's around what else can be done in terms of prevention. I use the 4030, but it's not helpful when something is happening right there on the bus. And you don't want to be seen ringing 111 to attract attention to yourself. So I'm wondering what could have happened before the trouble got on the bus. Is there anything that we could do in that sense?
You've seen we've launched the Crime Stoppers initiative, which is a way that you can text a message. We've had a couple of cases where people have used that to text in concerns, and we've been able to work with police to get an immediate response to that. So that would be the best way. We're also trialling the community support, so community ambassadors on buses. That's just to help give people a perception of safety rather than addressing a particular issue before it happens. It's more just reassuring people that there's somebody out on the network watching over them.
And do you see a correlation between any drops in public transport patronage and a serious media, event that makes the media on the bus or the train?
Yes, of course we do. And I mean, we did see the impact of that the last few years in terms of particular areas, and therefore focusing in terms of resourcing in those aspects. I think one of the big things that we all have to be cognizant of is how we work with our communities more, so which is what we've started doing, and having that focus in terms of the safety program and working with community groups, because we can't do it on our own. And nor can a bus driver, when they're out there driving the bus. So it is about building the community around the services, and that the more we can focus on that together and bringing different groups in to understand what the issues are in the community and putting support in place, the better. So with the recent Safety Ambassador trial, they're also linking people to different social services where they see things in order to help some of those issues that we're seeing. In terms of VTA, so violence, threats, aggression on public transport, it is trending down, which is good. And people create safety. The busier the services are, the less likely we are to see these things occur too.
Thank you. One more question, please. Do you think the police, is the police response, are you confident in the police response in regards to public transport safety issues, or could that be, do they prioritise?
Yes, we do. We work very closely with police, and they're very responsive to our services.
Okay, thank you. And in regards to the deaths and serious injuries number, is there any correlation between this rate or the incidences that happen and road design layout? Especially I'm noticing other areas where you've got a new road layout, you're not driving in a normal straight line here, you're driving, and if you carried on straight, you'd be going into oncoming traffic. And I know I keep going on about Pamua and Lagoon Drive and that layout in the intersection, but I'm seeing that same layout in other areas like Te Rako Drive. It's the same layout where you're driving oncoming traffic if you're not paying attention.
I don't have any information on trends with that in front of me, but I'm happy to have another conversation and see, what insights we do have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel.
In the quarterly report, it talks about the progress that's underway with community engagement around the grade separation level crossings project in Takanini, which is wonderful. Completely support that. Of course, the other week we blessed and had the minister there for the opening of the overbridge at Timahia. In a few days' time, we're going to be doing the same at Takanini. They are both tremendous features. I want to thank everybody involved for the delivery of that. One of the things, though, about the new bridges at Takanini and Timahia is that the throw screens for the stairs and the canopy is not yet installed, and I understand that that is subject to further budget bid. And I'm just wondering if Auckland Transport had a view around the need for those features, particularly around safety. I'm concerned about people accessing the bridge, mental health people in South Auckland who might try and self-harm, frankly, because they can jump off the top of them. And the throw screens and the canopy is really important to prevent that. We've seen excellent delivery of the Kiwi Rail bridges at Drury and Pairata, and we'll get that at Ngākura as well, but it's the AT Council bridges at Timahia and Takanini, and I assume Glen Innes, actually, where I have concerns because of the lack of those features at the moment, but I assume they will come. Can you comment on those?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, and I know what you're meaning. Yes, in terms of that, so I have had discussions with the teams in terms of what the progress is with that, so I'll get back to you in terms of the details.
You also copy in Councillor Winiata and Councillor Bartley, because I would imagine that they will be very concerned about the answer to that as well, please. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. There's no further questions. I'll just have one for me, and so that I guess the challenge is the, in terms of patronages, commuter, we seem to be going well, and we, I think we touched on a little bit before about the Saturday stuff, but it's train and bus and ferry becoming the default for people, how people move around generally when they're not commuting, and so they're coming into the city, etc. Is there, I mean, the issue that we have is that for us in the south, the trains aren't late enough, and so we can't get back after a show, we can't get back. So is there the ability with the coming summer to actually trial an extension to the timetable to allow that, and then considering the last leg, so actually how you get back and do the final thing, because it's, I think it's preventative to us actually, people moving to that public transport as a way of moving around generally. So is there the ability for us to look at that for the coming summer?
Thank you for the question. It's on the list of many things to do in terms of that we want to improve upon, but we also are cognizant that Kiwi Rail have to protect their maintenance blocks and their ability to do so. So I will definitely come back on that conversation because I know it's important and it keeps on coming up. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no further questions. So thank you, team. It is a really positive report, and so we are on a bit of a trajectory, and it'll be exciting to see what CRL adds to that. And you and I have talked about that, Stacey, about the potential that we will be hitting some pretty good targets and stuff. So well done, and thanks, Rebecca. Is there any discussion on this? None. Someone like to move? Thanks, Desley. Seconded, Richard. All those in favour say aye. And against, carried. The next item is the statement of intent. Rebecca's staying right where she is, and Claire is coming up. So